The judge's gavel sealed Helena's fate, her voice trembling in the face of injustice before everyone present. At that moment, the courtroom doors swung open and time stood still. Miguel entered not as a simple husband, but as a Supreme Court justice. His gaze, laden with immense authority, promised that true justice had only just begun. What happened there in that moment left everyone speechless. Helena Martinez sat straight back in the defendant's chair, her simple navy dress a stark contrast to the ornate courtroom surrounding her. At 34, her quiet dignity remained unshaken despite the weight of false accusations bearing down upon her shoulders. The mahogany panels and marble columns of the federal courthouse seemed to close in around her, a world designed to intimidate those who didn't belong. Judge William Crawford, known throughout legal circles for his merciless sentencing and political connections, peered down at her from his bench with thinly veiled contempt. His reputation for tough justice had built his career, but few knew how selectively that justice was applied. Helena had only wanted to protect her community center from demolition, to preserve a safe haven for underprivileged children. She never imagined this would lead to fabricated evidence and obstruction charges. Miguel had been called away to Washington for an emergency session, promising to return in time. Now, as the proceedings began, Helena clutched her worn leather journal, the only weapon she had against the system, determined to silence her. "All rise." The bailiff's command echoed through the courtroom as Judge Crawford took his place at the bench, his black robes billowing around him like a storm cloud. Helena stood with everyone else, her hands clasped tightly before her to hide their trembling. Case number 247B, the state versus Helena Martinez. Charges of obstruction of justice and tampering with government documents, the clerk announced, her voice clinical and detached. Judge Crawford's steely gaze settled on Helena. "Miss Martinez, how do you plead?" "Not guilty." "Your Honor," Helena replied, her voice quiet but unwavering. She could feel the weight of every eye in the courtroom upon her, the curious spectators, the stern-faced bailiffs, and most pressingly, the jury whose expressions ranged from boredom to suspicion. District Attorney Richard Vaughn rose from his seat, a man whose political ambitions were as carefully tailored as his expensive suit. "Your Honor, the state requests that bail be denied. Ms. Martinez has demonstrated a blatant disregard for the law and poses a flight risk." Helena's court-appointed attorney, Mark Simmons, a young lawyer clearly overwhelmed by the high-profile nature of the case, fumbled with his papers. "Your Honor, my client has deep roots in this community. She runs a children's center that serves over 100 families. She's not going anywhere." Judge Crawford's lips curled into what might have been a smile on another face, but on his it resembled something predatory. "Mr. Simmons, your client is accused of falsifying documents to prevent the lawful development of a property worth millions. These are serious charges." Helena felt her stomach tighten. The development was really just a corporate land grab that would displace dozens of families and close the community center that had become a lifeline for so many children. "The prosecution calls Regina Parker," Vaughn announced, and a polished woman in her 50s approached the stand. As the city planning commissioner, her testimony was designed to paint Helena as a troublemaker who had fabricated historical significance claims about the community sense building. "M. Parker, could you tell the court about your interactions with the defendant?" Vaughn asked after establishing her credentials. Regina adjusted her designer glasses. Ms. Martinez repeatedly interfered with the legal processes of city planning. When informed that the development had been approved, she submitted paperwork claiming the center was a historical landmark with signatures we later discovered were collected under false pretenses. Helena felt her face flush with indignation. Those signatures were genuine from residents whose families had used the center for generations. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering urgently, but he merely patted her hand dismissively. "And is there documented proof of this falsification?" Vaughn continued. "Yes," Regina replied smugly. "We have expert analysis showing signature inconsistencies and evidence that Ms. Martinez misrepresented the forms to those who signed." Mark Simmons's cross-examination was painfully inadequate. His questions lacked focus, and Judge Crawford sustained nearly every objection Vaughn raised. During a brief recess, Helena sat alone at the defense table while her attorney stepped out to take a call. A court reporter nearby whispered to a colleague, "This is such a waste of time. Crawford already decided this case before it started." "What do you mean?" the other woman asked. "Haven't you heard? That development project is being financed by Crawford's brother-in-law. This trial is just for show." Helena's blood ran cold. She had suspected corruption, but hearing it confirmed made her situation feel suddenly hopeless. As the court resumed, she discreetly reached for her phone beneath the table. Sending a brief text to Miguel, "It's worse than we thought. Judges compromised, need you." Judge Crawford noticed the movement. "Ms. Martinez, surrender your phone immediately. This is a courtroom, not a social gathering." A bailiff approached, hand extended. Helena reluctantly handed over her phone, praying Miguel had received her message. "Now," Crawford continued, his voice dripping with condescension, "let us proceed without further interruptions from the defendant." As the afternoon wore on, prosecution witness after witness delivered testimony that seemed rehearsed, perfect to perfect. The narrative they constructed portrayed Helena as a manipulative activist willing to break the law, to push her agenda. Her attorney's objections were feeble and consistently overruled. By 4 o'clock, Helena could see the jury's minds being poisoned against her. The evidence, some real, some clearly fabricated, was mounting. When Judge Crawford announced they would continue into the evening session to expedite matters, Helena knew he was rushing to a predetermined conclusion. "Your Honor," she finally spoke up, unable to contain herself any longer, "I request a brief recess to consult with different counsel. My current representation is inadequate." Judge Crawford's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Ms. Martinez, outbursts will not be tolerated in my courtroom. One more interruption and I'll hold you in contempt." The message was clear. She was to sit quietly while they dismantled her life and the community she had fought to protect. As the prosecution called their final witness of the day, the courtroom doors at the back opened with a quiet click. "Have you clicked the subscribe button yet? We're just shy of 1,000 subscribers. Join our community of viewers who stand for justice and dignity in a world quick to judge. Hit that subscribe button now to help us reach our milestone and never miss another powerful story of unexpected triumph." The courtroom fell silent as a commanding figure entered through the rear doors. Miguel Martinez moved with measured confidence, his tailored charcoal suit and distinguished silver temples contrasting sharply with the tense atmosphere. As he made his way down the center aisle, recognition rippled through the gallery, whispers erupted, followed by shocked glances between the prosecution team and Judge Crawford. "Proceedings will continue," Judge Crawford announced sharply, his gavel striking with unnecessary force, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his composure. Miguel approached the barrier, separating spectators from the court proper. "Your Honor," he spoke, his deep voice carrying effortlessly throughout the room, "I request permission to approach." Judge Crawford's face had drained of color. "Justice Martinez," he acknowledged stiffly, "this is unexpected. We're in the middle of proceedings." "Indeed, you are, William," Miguel replied, using the judge's first name with deliberate familiarity. "Proceedings involving my wife." The gallery erupted in murmurs. Helena turned, relief flooding her features as she met Miguel's steady gaze. "The court will take a 30-minute recess," Judge Crawford announced abruptly, rising from his seat with uncharacteristic haste. "I believe 15 minutes will suffice." Miguel countered calmly, "And I'll require the use of your chambers." The balance of power had shifted visibly. Judge Crawford hesitated, then nodded tersely. 15 minutes, court is in recess." As Miguel strode forward, the bailiff hurriedly opened the gate for him. He embraced Helena briefly, whispering something in her ear that brought color back to her cheeks. District Attorney Vaughn approached, hand extended with a politician's smile. "Justice Martinez." "What an honor." Miguel turned, his expression cutting the prosecutor's greeting short. "Mr. Vaughn, I believe we'll be discussing evidence suppression and prosecutorial misconduct shortly. I suggest you use this recess to reconsider your position without waiting for a response." Miguel guided Helena toward the judge's chambers, leaving a courtroom frozen in stunned silence. The atmosphere in Judge Crawford's chambers crackled with tension. The once imposing mahogany desk now served as a barrier behind which the judge had retreated. His earlier confidence evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. Miguel stood tall, his presence filling the room, not with bluster or intimidation, but with the quiet authority that had earned him his reputation on the Supreme Court. "William," Miguel began, his voice measured and precise, "perhaps you'd like to explain why my wife is being railroaded in your courtroom." With manufactured evidence, Judge Crawford adjusted his robes, a nervous habit betraying his discomfort. "Justice Martinez, I assure you the proceedings are being conducted according to spare me," Miguel interrupted, placing a leather portfolio on the desk between them. "This contains 3 things. First, authenticated documentation proving the community center's historical status. Second, affidavit from 7 residents confirming Helena's ethical collection of signatures. And third, financial records linking you to Meridian Development through your brother-in-law's holding company." Crawford's face drained of color so rapidly that Helena momentarily worried he might faint. That's preposterous," he stammered, but his eyes betrayed him as they fixed on the portfolio. "Is it?" Miguel asked softly. "The Judicial Ethics Committee doesn't think so. They've been investigating the unusually high rate at which cases benefiting Meridian Development pass through your courtroom." Helena watched the exchange with quiet amazement. This wasn't just her husband defending her. This was Justice Martinez, champion of judicial integrity, confronting corruption that had touched his own family. "You have a choice, William," Miguel continued. "You can recuse yourself immediately, citing a previously undisclosed conflict of interest, or the documents in this portfolio will be on the Chief Justice's desk tomorrow morning." The door opened without warning as District Attorney Vaughn entered, his confident smile faltering at the tableau before him. "I thought we might discuss a potential resolution," he began, then faltered at Miguel's piercing gaze. "Mr. Vaughn." Miguel acknowledged him with a nod. "Excellent timing. We were just discussing the prosecution's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence in my wife's case. Evidence your office has had for 3 weeks." Vaughn's smile disappeared entirely. "There must be some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding," Miguel cut in, "is your belief that you could use my wife as a stepping stone for your political aspiration. The email from the city planning office confirming the authenticity of those historical documents. The email your office received, but mysteriously never provided to the defense, has already been forwarded to the State Bar Association's Ethics Committee." Helena watched as the 2 men who had wielded such power over her fate just moments ago seemed to physically diminish before her eyes. Yet there was no triumph in Miguel's demeanor, only a profound sadness at seeing the justice system he revered being so thoroughly corrupted. "Here's what happens next," Miguel stated, looking between both men. "Judge Crawford, you will recuse yourself, citing personal connections that create an appearance of impropriety. Mr. Vaughn, you will file a motion to dismiss all charges with prejudice, acknowledging the prosecution's error in evidence handling." "And if we refuse?" Vaughn asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Then I make a single phone call," Miguel replied, "and by morning, this case becomes a national example of judicial corruption rather than a quiet correction. The choice is yours, but know that either way, my wife walks out of this courthouse today a free woman." Judge Crawford slumped in his chair, decades of carefully cultivated authority collapsing around him. "I'll prepare the recusal immediately." "As will I," Vaughn added quickly. "Prepare the motion to dismiss, that is." Miguel nodded once, then turned to Helena, his public persona softening as he reached for her hand. "Ready to go home?" As they walked out of the chambers, leaving the 2 men to contemplate their shattered careers, Helena felt a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and a touch of sorrow for a system that required such extraordinary measures to deliver ordinary justice. The courtroom fell silent as they emerged, all eyes watching, as Miguel guided Helena not back to the defendant's table, but straight toward the exit doors. Judge Crawford followed moments later, his robes seeming to hang more heavily on his shoulders than they had just 30 minutes before. "This court is adjourned," he announced, unable to meet the questioning gazes of the jury. "All charges against the defendant are dismissed with prejudice." As they walked down the courthouse steps together, Helena squeezed Miguel's hand. "Justice looks different from this side," she whispered. The evening sun painted golden streaks across the kitchen as Helena and Miguel shared a quiet dinner in their modest suburban home, far removed from the imposing columns of the courthouse and the weight of his Supreme Court responsibilities. Miguel had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more like the law student Helena had fallen in love with 20 years ago than one of the nation's most powerful jurists. "I never wanted to use your position that way," Helena said softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "Everything I've done with the community center, I've always wanted it to stand on its own merits." Miguel reached across the table, his fingers gently entwining with hers. "What happened today wasn't about my position, Helena. It was about exposing truth in a system designed to bury it." His eyes, warm with understanding, held hers. "You fought for those families. Is the right way through petitions, community organizing, legal channels. They were the ones who broke the rules, not you." Helena nodded, remembering the faces of the children who found safety and purpose within the Sense walls. The irony is that Judge Crawford could have walked into that center any day and seen the real historical value, not in the building itself, but in what it represents to generations of families. "Some people can only see value when it's reflected in a profit margin," Miguel replied, his voice tinged with the same passion that had driven his rise to the Supreme Court. "But real justice isn't measured in dollars." As dusk settled outside their window, Helena felt a profound sense of peace replace the day's tension. "Tomorrow, I'll go back to the center and tell everyone it's safe," she said, a smile finally warming her features. "And you'll go back to Washington to continue your own fight." Miguel squeezed her hand. Different battlegrounds, same war. Their quiet moment embodied what both had always believed, that true justice wasn't found in courtroom victories or powerful connections, but in the dignity of standing for what was right, regardless of